So good to be with everybody. And I'm super excited for this call today to get into some of the appraisal issues. And I'll audience Mark and Mark McCauley from CMG in just a minute. But thank you, Mark, for putting this together. We're going to have a panel of appraisers, and we've also got questions that everyone has sent in addition to the questions that Mark and the panelists will talk about. So very grateful and excited because as we're moving through this event, what you've got is norms changing and how we, certain aspects of how we practice. So I think that this is really timely, and we're going to, really what's happening now is that new trends are being established. So before I audience Mark, it's a few updates for everybody. So next Monday is June 1st, and we will start to initiate the offices opening back up and having the administrative staff where they can, start to be in the offices and all that. So we look at this as kind of a rolling opening, so to speak, maybe even a soft opening if you look at it that way. So the stay-home orders are starting to burn off and all that. So we'll be sending out an announcement on that. We've already got the protocols in place, so all we have to do is follow the protocols. And so we're excited to kind of get back to some idea of normal, right? Next, so on June 4th, next Thursday, we have the Matthew Farrar event, and that's going to be great. It's all about basically best practices for kind of jump-starting your business. And he calls it the U-shaped recovery, and the U isn't one of these, it's Y-O-U. And Matthew does a great job. He's a national, international speaker. He's a headliner at many conventions and, Inman and things like that, NAR. So that'll be very informative. And then we're also lining up our next speaker for 2 weeks after that. We think on June 18th, and I'll have an announcement on that probably Monday. So yeah, so I think I guess that's it. The one thing I want to continue to just mention to everybody is that you're doing an amazing job. And I know how difficult it is because, the real estate transaction is kind of choppy enough. And then all of a sudden you're throwing in masks and gloves and protocols and all that. And I think everyone's doing just really an amazing job adhering to not only the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. And so congratulations on that. And then also, of course, meeting the needs of your customers along the way and staying healthy. And so I just don't want that to go unsaid, how really impressive it is that the work that everyone's doing. So with that, Mark, I'll turn it over to you, and you can introduce your panel.
Great.
And thank you so much for supporting us through this whole process. It's been really appreciative, and I know the information that you're getting to all of us is timely and important. So thank you.
Great. So Chris, you're welcome, and it's always our pleasure to jump on here and talk about the relevant issues. So today, I've got several folks here. Hopefully this won't be like a Saturday Night Live Zoom skit. If you haven't seen that, it's a riot. You should go and YouTube it. But hopefully we're not part two of that. Today I've got three appraisers, and I have our ops manager. I'll introduce each of them in just a second. This is really for all of you. So please go ahead and send questions into the chat. For any that you have, I have a list of questions for the group. I will ask questions. I'll probably specifically ask an individual, so I will either ask Mark, Ray, or Jack to reply. But please, the others, jump in as you'd like. We just have to be careful when we do these Zoom meetings that we don't talk over people. And to the extent you can, it's probably better to mute yourself until you talk. That way you don't get slapped back here and there. So that being said, I know I see Jack Lavoie. Jack is the owner of Accurate Appraisal Services. Jack, thank you for being on. Mark McKeon. Mark, are you here?
Yes, I am here by phone.
Great, Mark. Thank you again for being here. Mark is McKeon Appraisal, excuse me, McKeon Appraisal Services, and Ray Fergal. Ray, are you here? Ray, did you make it? If you on mute, just go ahead and unmute. Okay, well, if Ray jumps on, we'll introduce him as well. And then I have our CMG operations manager. Some of you have likely either met her or spoken with her, Joan Tyrell. Joan and I have worked together for what feels like about 9 or 10 years now. And what I thought I would do is ask Joan to open up the call to just talk about in this ever-changing landscape and the challenges that we all have, but yet the dichotomy of working in one of the most robust real estate markets we've seen, and one that I believe is going to only ramp up from here. I thought I'd ask Joan to just chat from a lender's perspective, what we're looking at, on what occasions will we consider doing anything other than a full appraisal, and maybe just from the lender's perspective, what are some of the things you're looking at on an appraisal in a market where we're seeing increasing home values, we're seeing offers above list price. And so, Joan, if you don't mind unmuting and addressing that, that would be great.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. So let me just start with the appraisal and the alternative forms of appraisals that we allow. So right now, due to the COVID issues, we are allowing certain purchase loans to actually have alternative reports. We start by always ordering a full appraisal report. So let me say, that is the guidelines that have been put out by all the agencies, is they want a full report if we can get it. So from there, we see if an alternative report is needed. And this is all based upon the occupant of the property. That is really a key thing to remember. So it has to be the occupant that's requesting it, not the appraiser. So we've had some appraisers in different markets in New England where they did not want to go out to the properties anymore, or in Vermont early in this pandemic issue where they were shelter in place. So they couldn't go out to the properties. So we needed to kind of bob and weave and make sure that we accounted for all of those types of issues, and making sure that on a case-by-case basis, we were addressing each and every one of them. So keeping that in mind, there are two types of alternative reports that are allowable and that we have done on several purchase loans. The first is the desk review, and that is for conventional. That is actually our preference. The desk review is done on the 1004 form, and the appraiser has some detailed documents that or verbiage that they put in the report, but it allows us to still get all the reps and warrants through Fannie and Freddie that we can generally get on a full report. So that's our preference. The second is the 2055 external only report, and some of our programs allow for that one as well. The difference is on the desk review, there's no visiting the property. They literally need all of the information to be accessible online. For the 2055, for the internal shots, they're not getting any of those, but they are going out and measuring the outside of the property and doing an external only review. So keeping that in mind, there's some things that the appraisers might not be able to do or actually get you a report because of the fact that there might not be enough documentation at the town hall. There might not be enough information that they can access without really doing a full report. So we've run into that as well. And that generally is the appraiser coming back and telling us those types of things. So I'll let them answer more of those questions because they are the experts, actually. I will tell you that if the property is vacant, new construction, or a reno type loan, we cannot allow for any alternative report. We do need to have a full report on those. Again, talking about like Vermont, which was a shelter in place early in the pandemic, we did have to allow some vacant properties to have reports done. That was an exception. Once they opened up the state that the essential employees included appraisers and attorneys, we stopped doing the vacant properties. So again, those things like that are important to remember, just because of the fact that if you have a rental loan, or if you know there's repairs that are needed for that property, we cannot do an external or a desk review on those. It needs to be a full report. I know that Mark is going to open it up for questions after, so I guess I will turn it over to Mark and the appraisal panel.
Cool. Thanks, Joan. Appreciate it. So, Jack, let me start with you. For the group here, why don't you just let us know, what's life like for an appraiser right now? How is it different? And I guess, what can agents do to help you guys when you actually go in and do a physical interior, exterior appraisal?
Yeah, sure. First, and thank you for inviting me to come on here. In some ways, it's business as usual in the fact that we're still volume-wise, it hasn't changed. I think most real estate brokers would agree that the market is still pretty strong, though different. As far as a full, let's say it's one of those where we're doing a full inspection. I know every business, every appraiser treats it differently. I'll tell you what I do. I wear a mask. I wear a glove on my right hand. Just can't do the pen on my left hand with a glove. So I essentially have gloves, mask, booties if they want to require. I send out to every appointment we set a little email saying, hey, this is Jack Lavoie, blah, blah, blah. We're going to practice social distancing. So we kind of set parameters. So one thing that, and the brokers have been great and the homeowners have been pretty good, not perfect, but we ask that when possible, we're not looking to make it real tough, but if the doors to each room and the lights can be turned on, that's great. And as far as interior inspections, I'm sure you probably want to talk about the exteriors and desktops, which I'd be happy to do. But I think you pretty much are talking about what's it like going in properties right now.
Yeah, Jack, go ahead. Why don't you run with that? Why don't you talk about maybe the difference between doing a full appraisal and maybe an exterior?
Yeah. The appraisal process, let's say we get a desktop and people say, I had one broker I called, how the heck can you appraise this thing from not going in it? And that's a really good question. But we're talking about purchases in general, and we can, we have nowadays, you can gather everything. I can go on MLS and get some great photos. I can go and I can look at the seller disclosure statement to see how old the furnace is. I can go on aerial views. I can go on street views. You can get a tremendous amount of information. Heck, we make those decisions every day when we choose our comparables. We don't go inside, the property at 123 Main Street, but yet we use it as a comp and we judge its condition and its quality without going in it. So it's possible. One thing that I do is that I interview somebody. I call both the listing broker and the buyer agent, and I say, hey, tell me about the property. Tell me about the layout. Is there anything funky about it? Because those are the things that maybe you don't pick up on when you don't go into the property. And I just basically interview. And if I look at the MLS photos and I look at, let's say, an old listing from 2 years ago, one that's today, the tax card, and I talk to the broker, and all the information kind of adds up, then I'm super comfortable with it, and we're moving forward. If I make the decision that the information is not as good, or it's a unique property that, beyond the comfort level, then we would reach out to the client lender and say, really recommend going and do a full appraisal. But I've actually enjoyed enhancing my investigation skills, and actually I love desktops. I actually enjoy doing them.
Great. Mark, this one's for you. How would you classify the current market? As you heard me earlier talk about multiple offers, not only offers, but sales above list. So how would you classify the current market? And are markets right now in, let's say, New Hampshire, Maine, different by town and or by price point?
Last part first. Yeah, I think they are different by town and price point. The closer you are to employment centers, the greater the strength of the market, I've observed. The further away you get, less populated areas, although I'll catch myself on that and say, I wonder if that's going to change over time because of the pandemic, but for the time being, I think that is the case. I also think that within each community, you can have different strengths in the market as you rise up in price and you get up. It's going to vary by town as to what, if you took any town and divided the value range into thirds, I think generally speaking, the top third, you may already see signs of some weakness, but the mid and the middle third is probably still reasonably strong, and the lower third is very strong. The first part of the question is, how would I describe this market? I would say it defies logic. I would have thought when this was all beginning a few months ago that that the market would be coming unglued at this point. And it's anything but. I'm shocked at the level of activity and transactions, but you can't fight the market. The market is the market. People want housing. And in fact, the pandemic types of issues that we may continue to see going forward may make people's homes more important to them than they were before. So I think there's great strength in the market. I don't think that's true nationally. I think in other parts of the country, I've read stories where they see some weakness, but the Northeast, or certainly our neck of the woods, it's just mind-bogglingly strong.
And Mark, maybe sort of appraisal 101 here. Talk to us a little bit about what you're specifically looking for. What are the key components of an appraisal when you go in and you're doing a full review?
Yeah, so it won't be to anyone's surprise that the first word out of my mouth is the location of the property. That's the greatest key to value. I think quality and condition come close behind. I think there has been a change in the market over time that, particularly with younger purchasers, I'll admit to my age, and I'm getting up there, and in my day, it was very common for young people to go in and buy houses that were fixer-uppers, and that day seems to be gone. Everybody wants things all done, so I think that's a key to both value and marketability. But I think those are the key items: the location, the quality, the condition. Trying to think if there's anything that is an immediate sort of strike on the property, but I would say it's probably the issue of condition.
Okay.
All the other facets and amenities of the property sort of fall after that.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Jack, anything to add to that, key components?
I agree with just about 100% of what Mark said, probably because we worked together, 27 years ago now, we're really giving our ages away. I agree with that. I think part of his assessment on the market it doesn't make sense. I would have predicted that it would have gone down, but we had such a shortage of homes that to me, there's a built-in buffer there that, maybe, people took their homes on the market, but if half the buyers come out of the market, there was still ample. So I'm seeing the same thing, seeing it very strong. The contracts we reviewed, many of them are over asking. Brokers are saying, hey, we had 5 offers. You would think it's, springtime in 2000, pick a number. Also agree with condition. Location certainly is the old saying, and it's followed by condition. Somebody's not muted there, I don't think. And
It's actually great.
It'll range.
I was going to jump in there, Mark, when you were ready. Yeah, I'm actually on my son's computer, so he had a camera on it, so I grabbed his.
Awesome.
I was going to add to that with what Jack and Mark were saying was I always think is square footage of the home is usually the biggest value indicator for any property. I think that's where you kind of look at where the biggest asset of a residential home is the square footage. Square footage equals value all the time. Location is number one, but I think square footage is number two. And your functional utilities between your bedrooms and bathrooms add to the overall desirability depending on what neighborhood you're located in. You know, if a 3 or 4 bedroom is quantified to a higher value, then, you know, obviously you go in that direction. You know, that's one of your basic value indicators for any property other than being moving condition.
It depends on the market. It depends on the town, the market, and the area. I mean, certainly, all else being equal, a home that's in a similar location, similar condition, similar quality, one's 1,800 square feet, one's 2,500 square feet. You don't need me here to say that the second home is going to be worth more. But I guess that kind of goes with a saying that when you're comparing properties, obviously you're going to use properties that are similar in size. You know, can you substitute a property that's 2,200 square feet versus 24? Because, you know, brokers, you take buyers out and they look at a range of square footage. They don't look at, I'm looking at 2,000 square feet. They're looking at, hey, about 2,000 square feet, maybe 3 to 4 bedrooms. But within a group of homes that, let's say, say you look at a bunch of 2,000 square foot homes, 1,800, 2,200, 23. I think what Mark was saying, and I agree with him, is that it's the condition and the quality of it that make a big difference. I mean, you look at a home, 2 homes that were built in, let's say, in 1985. One of them's got, you know, no updating. The other one, maybe you need to put 30 grand into it to put in a new kitchen and maybe some tile. You know, the difference in value is actually more than, it's a multiple of the cost. You know, it might be twice as much as it would cost for somebody to improve it. You know, that's why it's very, you know, it's very elastic. You know, for every, you know, $20,000 difference in the amount of work it would take, it might be 40, 50, 60,000 in condition, you know. So, you know, that's one of, you know, that's one way of looking at it. So.
Mark, let me go to you. We've heard a lot about the fact that properties are coming in over value or over list price. When you see an appraisal request and the bid price is over the list price, I don't want to say any concerns, but how do you treat that appraisal? Does it raise any red flags to you at any point in time, or is that an indicator of the current market?
I think it's an indicator of the current market. It really, there probably was a point in time in the past that it would have raised an eyebrow. And you say, why would that happen? But under current market conditions, and Jack alluded to the lack of supply, it's happening so frequently now. I had just written myself a note to jump in on this exact topic because the multiple offers, the real estate, you folks as real estate brokers can help us tremendously by telling us the number of offers that you had. And I'll give you an example, one that I'm had some pushback this week from an underwriter at a lender, not CMG, a different lender, but they were very hung up on the fact that this property sold significantly, probably close to 10% over its list price. And they kept pushing back and pushing back. But it was relatively easy for me to answer their questions because in this particular case, there were 12 offers on the property. And when you have that kind of competition for a property, it's bound to get bid up. So the more information that you can provide us about the number of offers and the strength of the offers, the usually short marketing time that it took to get those offers, is helpful to us in explaining to the lenders why that's happening. I don't think there are appraisers who are concerned about it because we're seeing it so often now. And normally 1 or 2 or sometimes all of our comps have had the same circumstance where they've sold over their list price. So it's not hard to support that notion by pointing out that those comps also sold higher than their respective list prices. And for you folks that are brokers, I can appreciate the fact that it's incredibly hard to get a price on a house today because the market in some cases is moving so fast, or in some segments, I should say, is moving so fast that it's very hard to find that price level. You almost have to pick a list price, put it out there, and let the market tell you where it wants to be.
Great. So to both of you guys, to Mark and Jack, I'm going to go through some chat questions now, and if you could, let's make them brief with the responses so I can try to get as many of these in as I can. So Jack, I'll ask you, if the tax card states a house has 3 bedrooms, but the seller's agent lists it as a 4-bedroom, what's the discrepancy? Would this discrepancy be noted on the appraisal report?
Yeah, I might put
Is that Jack? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. First of all, same as measuring the property. Whatever I see in my eyes is, I'm gonna go with. I mean, if there's 4 bedrooms and there's a 4-bedroom septic, and it can be legally utilized as a 4-bedroom. If the tax assessor has a 3-bedroom, that's fine. I mean, it's a 4-bedroom. I mean, you can see it. I will sometimes, because sometimes, whether it's CMG or another lender, they may sell the loan. There might be somebody a month down the road might do a review on it and say, wait a minute, it's 4-bedroom. The tax card says 3. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll put in the report, subject is a 4-bedroom colonial. However, listed as a 3. I would put that in there almost as a preemptive strike. But as far as what it's called, it's based on its highest and best use. If your buyer is going to walk in there and they're going to look at it as a 4-bedroom, it's a 4-bedroom. And, whether or not it has a closet or not, if the market feels like it is going to be utilized as a bedroom and it's a legal use, it's a bedroom.
Got it. Mark, here's one for you.
Can I follow up?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Can I just back up 1 sec on that one?
Yeah.
Jack touched on this point, but I think the place that we see that issue occur the most is with regard to the septic system issue. Sometimes there may be a 4th bedroom in a house, but a little research tells you that the septic was never expanded to accommodate a 4th bedroom. I think, Jack, you tell me what you think, but my thought would be that most appraisers would say it is then considered to be a 3-bedroom because it's not supported by the septic system.
Yeah, I agree with that. Is a 3-bedroom, and then you could, does it mean that a 4-bedroom buyer would not buy it? Because a lot of times that 4th bedroom is used as a den. It may be tough to delineate that there may even be much or any value difference, but factually it would be a 3-bedroom. I agree with you, Mark.
Great.
Yeah.
Mark, here's one. How does a seller concession on a contract factor into the appraisal?
I sort of like this question and I sort of don't, because every time I start talking about it, I get myself in trouble. It does. As a matter of fact, in the definition of market value, that's actually a part of the boilerplate in the appraisal report, it says that appraisers must wrestle or deal with this issue. It says that sales concessions should be adjusted for according to what the market says that it should, which means that if there's a $10,000 seller concession for closing costs, it doesn't necessarily, when it becomes a comparable, it doesn't necessarily have to be adjusted at that full amount. But I think, and I'll take any feedback from anybody on this issue because I know people feel very strongly on both sides of this argument. It is my opinion that a sales concession that is designed to pay for closing costs, that $10,000 that the number that I've chosen there, has nothing to do with the value of the piece of real estate. And so it's just a mechanism for a buyer to be able to extend paying for those closing costs over a long period of time, theoretically the life of the mortgage. So if you sell a house for $300,000 that has a $10,000 sale concession, once that closes and becomes a comparable sale, it's effectively going to become a $290,000 sale because we're going to call the appraiser or whomever we can to get the information about that sales concession and subtract it from the comparable. So at least that's the way we handle it. I recognize that many appraisers treat this differently. That's my mindset on it. And I've been working at this for decades and decades and trying to understand the other side, but I haven't come around to understand the other thought process yet. So there we are.
I can add one thing to that, and I'll throw it back to the brokers. On almost every what do they call it? Disclosure you put in the listings, you say commissions only paid on the basically the net sales price, right? And that's the reason, right? Because that extra built-in closing cost really doesn't go to the seller. So I agree with that.
Jack, while you're there, why don't I ask you about this? So Nancy has said over in Keene, one of her last appraisals noted a 8 to 9% appreciation rate. I know it could be by market or price point, but generally speaking right now, is there a number that you would put on appreciation rate right now?
It really does depend on not only geography, but also the price point. Like Mark made a great point earlier, dividing the market into 3 segments. You know, the most inexpensive segment, the lower third, is probably appreciating at a higher rate. However, I'll give you everybody here a great tip. You have awesome resources. If you go to nhar.org, right on the first page, they have the market stats. And if you just go into like the most recent report, they'll show what the median prices for New Hampshire, and they'll do like a year, you know, what it went out with a year. That's a really good benchmark. I will say this, right? I think that in Rockingham County and Hillsborough County, that it's easily gone up 10% easily over the last year. In general, again, there's going to be some appraisal. We look at the data, and property's gone up 15%, and there may be some that's only gone 2 to 3%. But I think, you know, they've gone up a strong amount. But that's a great resource. You go to it, NHA, first, right in the front page, market data. You go in and you look at those reports, and they give you the average increase. Now, this doesn't mean you're going to eliminate the appraiser's job, okay? Just
Good. Okay, good. Hey, Mark, so I've got one here from Mark. So is personal property included in the sale still factored in or adjusted for the appraisal process, i.e. boat, plow truck, furniture?
Yeah, it would be excluded from the appraisal. Ours has got to be real estate itself. So any of that extra personal property that's included as a part of the sale would be subtracted out. It's a tricky thing. It's a difficult thing, but it's tricky in that we would have to get some sense of what the contributory value of that personal property was.
Got it. Mark,
but
again.
It's not going to be part of the appraisal.
Okay, Mark. How about log homes? Can you compare them to stick built, and do they have a higher or lower value? Any comments about log versus stick?
I think the key to appraising a log home is finding other log homes that have also sold. And the time that you would compare it to something else is when you simply don't have other log homes that have sold. Sometimes I go back further in time. You know, the mortgage industry allows us to go back 12 months time. There are times when to provide additional data, I go back another 6 months or 12 months, so a total of 24, to try to put enough log home data in there that it will reflect what the market reacts to in terms of a log home. So it's not impossible that you would see an appraisal that compares, that it uses a comparable that's different than log structure, but it should be relatively rare, and it should be in the cases that there isn't one. Value-wise, that's really hard thing to know. I suspect that they are more costly to build, but I don't know that that is necessarily reflected in the subsequent sales of the homes. And there are also a wide array of qualities of log homes, so that's going to be a factor as well.
Okay, Jack, here's one. Nope, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mark, just one more thing. I wanted to go back to that prior question about the I think the number you used was 8% on the increasing values. I think the National Housing Finance Agency said New Hampshire over the last 12 months has run 7.37%, but that's the whole state. So the southern part of the state has probably done much better than that. The northern part of the state may have been much weaker than that, but on average, the state of New Hampshire was 7.37. So.
Got it. Okay. Jack, how about finished spaces without a permit? Do appraisers look for permits, and they're referring to like a basement or an addition? And what kind of adjustment is made if there are finished areas with no permits?
It's actually kind of a controversial area within the appraisal industry. First of all, and Mark is too. Mark and I we do our job. We're honest appraisers. We call it the way we see it. But the other thing is that it's a little bit beyond the scope of our appraisal necessarily to go start checking for building permits on everything there is. If it is very common, probably more than half the properties that have finished basements that I see, they're either not on the tax card, they're not, or maybe the tax card says it's 200 square feet finish and it's 1,000. That, to me, it's almost customary that people finish their basement. So this might be the first thing that we may have totally different answer on this, but if it's in an area that there's all kinds of finished basements and they got 800 square foot of basement, and there's, and the tax assessor doesn't have it either because it was added afterwards or the tax assessor just screwed up, I'm still going to probably give it credit for that because a buyer is going to give credit for it. I mean, the probability of them being asked to remove the finish on just a basement family room is just so low that I'm going to give it value.
Got it. So
can I
yeah, go,
piggyback on
please,
that
Mark.
one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I agree that I think a lot of appraisers would see a finished basement and probably not check for the permit. It's not out of the realm of possibility that it could come up on underwriting that I have had underwriters ask me to check for permitting for something that didn't appear on the tax card. Although a lot of things appear on the tax card that the tax assessors assess what they see, and they don't, I would say, I can't say never, but almost never do they cross-check with the building department to see if whatever's in the house was permitted. So you can't often trust the tax card. The critical issue to me in this regard is when you get to an accessory dwelling unit, and now you've got a second cooking facility, you've got plumbing and electrical that you might not have in just a straight old finished basement. So now that's gonna require an appraiser to check and make sure. And I, just from my own personal experience, I think half or more than half the people put in their accessory dwelling units without permits, and it almost always causes a problem. So I would say if as a real estate salesperson, broker, if you are listing a home or helping someone purchase a home, that checking into that is going to be a critical issue, knowing that it was fully permitted.
Awesome. Well, I promised Angela I would stop at 140. We're just about there. Jack and Mark and Joan and Ray, if you made it, I apologize.
No, here all the time.
Ray, my apologies. Okay. All right, Ray, you're on as Matt F. That's what threw me.
I discussed that earlier. I said I had to take my son's computer.
Okay, gotcha. Well, to all of you, I just want to say thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. And there are some questions I didn't get to in the chat. Angela, if you want to, or Lorraine, if you want to put those into an email, I'll make sure we get those answered. And again, to the panel itself and to all of you, I hope you stay safe, and let's get through this as best we can, and hopefully this thing will open up soon. So, Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, that's great. Hey guys, thank you so much for making the time to do this. This was really helpful, for the agents, and helpful for them to understand what you guys are going through, so that we can better work with you and make sure you're getting what you need. So thank you so much. This was really informative. Mark, thanks for setting all this up. Really appreciate it. So just another reminder for our event next Thursday. And then lastly, though, I want to just make a plug for the food bank. So far, we've bought over 5,000 meals in 3 states, which is really impressive. And I just ask you to, just keep that in mind. And when you get a chance, go on to the links, and we'll send them out again with this recording, and just make sure that you make even a small donation. $10 here, $20 there. It makes a huge difference for these food banks, and they really still have not seen their moments of high need are not even close yet. So if you just keep that in mind. You guys are all doing a great job. This was a fantastic call. Thank you again to Mark and the panelists, and stay safe, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Take care.
Thank you.